Hey, good morning, everyone. So we still have like 4 or 5 minutes. So let me know if you have any questions before we start. No question. So you are all done with lab 0?
Yep.
Good, good, good. Sorry, what was that? Okay, nothing in the chat.
I had a question with the first question on lab 1. Is that fine? Just
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. It didn't say anywhere how we're getting the inputs for like the for loop or anything, or how many we are getting.
Yeah. So that if you read the question, there are no inputs, right? Because it tells you, I guess, if I remember this question specifically, it's 400, I guess, something around this. So basically the question itself tells you what is the number of iterations. So you don't need to get any input from the function itself, right? This is why the function takes no input. So let me look into the question to give you the exact number.
Was that one retailer?
Okay, so here. Yeah, so to compute the sum of all numbers that are multiples of 4 between 30 and 1,000, right? So that's why the function takes no input. You don't need any input from the user or input to the function to compute the value in this question. Right?
Oh, I misunderstood. Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. Let me look into the chat. There were a couple of things here. Do you prefer our usernames to be our Mac ID? I know that some of you already modified this. It doesn't really matter as far as you are using your Mac email in the account. This is what matters. But in fact, it would be better. Something that I forgot to say very clearly in Lab 0 document, and this is why I'm not going to penalize, but you are asked, there is a README file. Once you open your GitHub repository, you were supposed to see this README file that asks you to input your.
And then just chaos, right?
Can
At
I
least
ask
with
you
Microsoft, it seems like they're trying to schedule this thing out, and they released an entire page detailing all of this time, when you can do it, and where you can pre-order, and even where you can do Xbox All Access. So let's go to the page here.
Okay. So yes, I would prefer that, but that's not a problem at all. And usually in coming labs, you will be asked to modify this README file to enter your username and section number, as well as your numerical ID, such that it's easy for us to grade it. But for Lab 0, don't worry, that's okay. If we have the check mark, I will come into this question once we start, so don't worry about this. Question: if you pass all the non-hidden tests for the lab, does a check mark appear in the Git repository, or do you have to pass? No, yeah. So that's a good question. So, and what is hidden tests? Because maybe some of you didn't like hear this in the lecture or so. So basically, the way we run the labs is we give you some tests to be able to run locally to check your lab correctness, and you are also asked to enter or code some of your tests as a double check. Good. But as you might imagine, not all questions will have 100% coverage in tests, especially if it's an involved one. The add is not a big deal because it's just a single line. And this is why we didn't bother much in Lab 0. I was more concerned in the environment. But later, in subsequent labs, there might be a case that you pass all the tests that are given to you, but in fact, you still have a problem in your code, right? Because the test is only testing the case that it provides the input to, right? For example, if all the tests are providing positive integers, while you have a problem with handling negative integers, then the test will not expose that, right? This is why also you are encouraged to think of, and this in mentality is the important thing. And in internships, most companies are focusing on this, right? Once you write a piece of code, you need to have the mentality to think of what are the corner cases that can stress this code. And we will discuss this more when we advance in the course, right? But when you add a test, think of what might be this test doing, right? For example, if we have tests that are testing positive thing, then add negative numbers, add zeros, add a very big number, very small number. So try to think of what might be really this test is stressing, right? Going back to our topic, we give you some tests, and then we also have some tests that we have internally in our machines, like between me and TAs. And once you submit your lab, the TAs will get all the repositories and then do all the cross repositories checking that we were doing that I talked about before, to make sure that there are no similarities across different repositories and across GitHub other repositories as well. This is an initial step. And then we run all the tests, the ones you got and the ones that we have and you don't got, and your tests as well. Any test that you have in your folder, we will run it, right? And then hopefully you pass all of that, then that's great. So this is kind of the background of what hidden testing. It's not hidden test, it's just something that we didn't give you, right? The check mark is only for the tests that you currently have, right? So it's like, for example, for lab 0, it's only the 2 tests we give you in addition to the 3rd test, which you have to make sure you add it to the test suite, right? So it only tests that the tests that you wrote in your code, and the check mark will be green. And I will go with you right now, because I kind of discovered that maybe not all of you are able to check that. So I will go with you through the GitHub page now, but this check mark will mean that you passed all the tests you have, not the ones that we have internally. Good. How do I know if I have finished lab 0? I will come into this as well. Now, where do we find the check mark? I will come into this. The only files we need to modify are questions.c and test cases.c, not test.c. I put a printf statement in my testing case, but after no, you shouldn't put any printf in your testing case. It only shows 3 results run correctly, but no anything printed. So you shouldn't be printing anything. So don't put a printf. In fact, it should print, but I don't know why, but like you shouldn't be putting any printfs in the test cases. The way the test case or the unit testing framework is handled is just prints things using other functions. Good. So let's now, given that you are asking about the GitHub page, I hope you are able to see the GitHub page, correct? Can someone confirm in the chat just to make sure we are all on the same page? Okay, perfect, thanks. So I just open any repository, like for example, one. So this is, oh, sorry, this shouldn't be. So for example, let me do this. And then this. This is the page that you see in your repo internally. And because this is a repository that is shared between us as an organization and you, so we also see exactly the same thing, right? So what is here? Here you have all the files. And if you open any file of these, you will see your changes, right? But something that is very good about GitHub that I told you before is that it can tell you exactly what is the history. And for each commit you have done, remember you do a git add from our last tutorial, and then do a git commit to push to your local repository, and then a push to push things here in the remote repository, right? Then it gives every commit or every process, every push a number. And this is the number, the latest you have seen. So for example, in this repo, the last commit has this number and it was done 9 days ago. You see this green check mark here? This is the one that means you passed all the things you have. If you click it, it says all checks have passed. And in fact, it can give you even some details. So if you look into the details here, the step that is important for us is the auto grading. So if you open it, it tells you that all tests are passed. And then this is exactly the message you get from your Eclipse as well. Okay, 3 tests. And then it gives you these funny things, right? So so this is how you can check. If you have a problem, and we will come now to the case where you have, for example, you didn't pass for some of the commits, then this will not be as green and you will have this red X mark, right? So this is about the check mark question that you guys had. Then another thing, so this is what I would do if I were you, to double check that if everything is passed in my Eclipse, I push and then I look here to see if I really passed all the 3 tests. One problem you might find, for example, if you forgot to add your 3rd test into the test cases, if you look here, still you will have a green check mark, right? But if you look here, you will find only you passed 2 tests, which are the original 2 that we gave you, not your 3rd one. That means your 3rd test is not added to the test suite, right? So you need to make sure that you pass the number of tests that you are required to pass. In this lab 0, 2 we gave you, and 1, at least 1 you are supposed to add. You are free to add more if you wish. Good. So going back. So another very interesting thing you can see in Git is to look into the history of all your commits, how you have evolved your code over time. Here, for example, we have 5 commits, right? And if you click them, it gives you exactly the 5 commits with their numbers. The last one passed, the second before the last one passed, but then, for example, the 3rd one was failing here. And in fact, these 3rd ones, these are the ones that we created the repo in. So you can see here that this is our own pushes or commits. But here it also tells you who committed. So this is your commit, right? For example, if you are working in a project, not something related to this course, but assume you're using GitHub for a project with a friend. You can also track who committed what to track a problem. Not even that. In fact, if you just look into here, there is a very, like that's the message you put, right? For example, here the message, you remember git commit -m, and then you give a message in a string. This is a message, and this message, if it's meaningful, it will help you. For example, here I just knew, I just opened this repo in fact the first time now, right? I just knew that this commit is mainly about updating the README. So if I click it, this is another interesting thing. GitHub, it tells you what is the change history. The red one is what was before and deleted, and the new one what is added. So you can even track what changes you have made in a certain commit. For example, here the Mac ID this was the template that is given, so he deleted it, and then he added his own. Perfect. And this is student ID and added his own. So this tells you exactly the changes that has been made, and that's something that is very beautiful. For example, if you have a problem, you are tracking with the TA, you tell him, I was passing the last commit, but now I don't know what changed my code. Previously, if you are working in your local machine, you have to kind of do Control Z or go back, or Control Y to go back and undo everything, right? To see what really didn't pass. But here, every commit has its own. Then you can, first of all, check what changes you have made that make you fail and or pass if you check. And then also you can even go back in history to make your repo exactly at the commit that was passing. So if, for example, you added some changes and those changes created a problem for you and you want to just undo everything, you can very easily go back to the commit that was passing, right? Good. So let's look into a case where, for example, there was checks that are failing. So here all checks have failed. Because I just want to show you what will happen if you are failing things, right? So go to the auto grading, you will find here, like originally we had 2 tests. The first one expected 6, but was 2. The second one expected 4, but it was 0. So it gives you exactly the message that is printed on Eclipse as well. And here you can check which test cases failed and which not. Good. Okay, let me stop here and take some questions. So the only files we modify. Question: what terminal do I pick after hitting the blue computer? Okay, so in Eclipse, it doesn't really matter much. I personally pick the local terminal. You can also pick the bash terminal. Any terminal type would work. If you are using Mac, okay, this takes us to another question, because some of you were using Mac. If you are using Mac, in fact, you don't have the terminal issue in Windows. So some of you mentioned this step that we have to install the terminal in Eclipse. Get us to a link that may be specifically for Windows. In Mac, Mac OS is a Unix-based operating system. So it has a Unix terminal by default, like it's a natural terminal. Windows, we don't have these Unix terminals. This is why we needed to install another terminal. In Mac, just open your regular terminal, go to the BAS where you have your repo, and you are good. You don't even need to install the Eclipse terminal. You can if you want, but it's not necessary. Let me see questions here. Does the check mark, please, because some of you, as I said in previous lecture, some of you answer questions. So if you have a question, put it in brackets as a question, write question in front of it. Does the check mark indicate a perfect lab? I have already explained this, I hope so. Just that you passed the test cases. Okay, question. Me and 2 other people passed the tests for lab 1 according to the terminal, but GitHub. Okay, thanks, Kurt, for this. So for lab 1, there was a problem with the make file. I'm going to fix today. So if you are passing in Eclipse, that's fine for now, but please wait. By today, I will send out an announcement. And I guess maybe you need to do a get bool to get the updated make file to make sure you pass in the GitHub. But don't worry about this for now. If you are passing internally in Eclipse, most probably you should be fine. It's an error in the make file. Yeah, okay, I actually already added this. If you pushed and committed your code, it's essentially submitted, right? Yeah, so I'll erase it. That's correct. So once you do the push, and this is another good thing about developing, so your development environment is exactly the one that you use to submit. So you submit naturally. You don't need to do any other step to submit. Once you push, you see things as green. That means you already submitted your lab, because as you have seen, I have access to this and I can see it, right? Whenever I run the project, it says error starting process launched failed. I'm not sure why. So, okay, so for these specific questions, Mohammed, please, can you go to office hours? Because I have been saying this, and I also, in the past 2 weeks, and I've sent an announcement yesterday, go to any of the office hours. You can share a screen and we can help you fix this problem. My GitLab says I authored and I committed. Is this okay? I'm not sure, Matt Patel, if I get that question. So please, if you can clarify, I can help with that. If you still have issues and you feel you don't see, as far as you see this green thing in your GitHub page, that means you passed. If not, then there is a problem, I guess we need to fix. Do I need to commit README, and how? You don't commit specific files. Okay, that's a good question. So we modified, for example, forget about the README for now. You changed it to files, in fact, questions.c and test cases.c, right? But when you did add, by just adding everything, you didn't need to specify the name of the file. So if you modified README, do exactly the same steps, git add all, git commit -m something, and then git push. It should push whatever changes you have already made. If I do a git bool, does it replace everything in my local repo, or they will be merged? Okay, that's also a good question. If you do a git bool, and there are conflicts, so Git is smart in handling conflicts. For example, the case I was giving for lab 1, we are going to change only the make file. Hopefully you are asked not to touch the make file. You are only doing the development in the questions.c and the test cases. That means there will be no overlap at all, correct? That means if you are asked to merge, just merge peacefully and things should be okay. You will have both the changes of the make file we have done and your own changes to the other files. And that's the beauty of revision control, is that, again, collaboration is very easy made, right? I went to the office hours and I have a green check on the main page like showed, but when I click the README file, it has a red X. When I open it, there shouldn't be any red X in a specific file. I'm not sure if I get what you mean. So maybe, Karina, we can look into it together in an office hour. But if the TA said maybe ignore it, then that's okay. If you are already passing the green check mark. Okay, good. So let me go back here. So I hope this also kind of give you, like, the main purpose again of Lab 0 is the environment. Get to know it, how to handle it, how to get the best usage of it, right? So hopefully this kind of covers the GitHub web page part that we didn't do in the last tutorial.